Welcome friends to the second video of learning how to crochet. In our last video you learned how to hold your hook and your yarn, and you learned how to make a foundation chain. So in this video we're going to build on that and learn how to make single crochets into our foundation chain. I do want to say, in my last video I said the standard for creating tension is to loop it around your pinky and then go up over your pointer finger. But really, when you look into books, the standard way is to wrap it around your pinky and then weave it in between your fingers and over your pointer finger. So you can give this a try too and see how it feels. And there are a lot of other ways on YouTube that you can look up to hold your yarn, but hopefully one of the methods I've showed you will work for learning purposes. Okay, so we're going to start with our foundation chain. Make sure you leave at least a 4-inch tail for weaving in the ends. So you make your circle, you bring some yarn behind the circle, and you pull up the yarn and pull tight. Not too tight, remember, we want some wiggle room. You can see. Okay, so let's make another foundation chain. Let's do 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. We have our foundation chain. And once again, we notice that each chain is made up of 2 loops. Here's a top loop and a bottom loop. Okay, and when you flip it around, you see that there are horizontal bars. Some people like to start their single crochets or whatever stitch they're making into that horizontal bar to start their stitch. When I learned crochet, I was taught to go into the top loop of the chain. So that's how I'm going to teach you. So with single crochets, you always go into the second chain from the hook. This does not count. So now you're going to count from the hook 1 chain. Let's see if I can get this better. Here's our first chain, and here's our second chain. So we're going to go in our second chain from the hook. Yep. Put your hook through that, yarn over, pull up a loop. Now you have 2 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. That is 1 single crochet made. Now what we're going to do, because we're beginners, we're going to mark that. See how there's 2 loops here? It's a V. That's our first top of our single crochet stitch. So we're going to mark that. We're going to go under those 2 loops and close up our stitch marker. Now we're going to keep going. So our next chain is right here. And we're going to go under that loop, pull up a loop. Now you have 2 on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And our next chain is right here. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. When you're working off your foundation chain, it's flimsy, there's not a lot of structure, kind of moves all over the place. So you just have to do your best to stabilize it with your thumb and your middle finger. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops. But it gets a lot more enjoyable as you build your fabric and it's more stable. Okay. Next chain. chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both loops. Yep, so what we're doing for our crochet lingo that you're learning, we're continuing with our yarn overs. We're going into our chains, yarning over, and we're pulling through loops to create a single crochet. So that SC stands for single crochet. So that's a new one you learned. Okay, let's keep going here till we get to the end. Okay, we're at our last stitch. You can see here's our knot, our slip knot, and then here's the loop, the top loop that comes out of that. See? That's our last stitch. Go through there. Okay. Now we're going to turn our row. We're going to chain one and turn. Okay, so now we got to find our first single crochet to go into. And you can see this loop right here? That's the back loop. And this is the front loop. It's kind of hard to, okay. So these two loops here is what you want to work under. Insert your hook so that it's under both of those loops. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. So now, because we're beginners, and sometimes it's hard to see our stitches, we're going to mark our first stitch. Okay, you can see the V here. You're going to put your stitch marker underneath both of those loops. Close it. Okay, now we're going to keep going. So here's our next stitch. And we made sure that we went under both of those loops. Okay, because from this side you can only see the back loop. So you just want to make sure you're going under both. And the hook does glide through very easily under both. So it's not tricky or anything. You just want to make sure that you're going under both loops when you're beginning, when you're first learning. So let's go to the end of the row with our single crochets. Okay, we've come to our last stitch because we marked it. So we're going to take out our stitch holder. And we're going to go in that last stitch. And we're going to turn our row by doing one chain, chain one, and turning our work. And then we're going to go into our first stitch, which is right, oh man, I hope you guys can see this. It's right here. This is our first stitch. And we went under both loops. Okay, we're going to pull up a loop, yarn over, go through two, and we're going to mark that stitch. to make sure it's easy to find at the end of the row. So let's work our way to the other end with our single crochets, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so here we are at our other end, and it's really easy to find our last stitch because we marked it. Again, we're just using these stitch markers because we're learning. Once you start to recognize your stitches, you don't have to use the stitch markers anymore. Okay, so we're going to chain 1 and turn and do our first stitch, first single crochet, and mark it. So continue with this, practicing your single crochets, paying attention at what the ends look like so you can start to recognize those stitches without having to use your markers. And just work at trying to make your single crochets as even as possible. So do a few rows of this until you're really comfortable with it. And then in our next video, we will learn how to do a double crochet.